were a deacon living in this Shaker community 150 years ago, you would be charged with a lot of responsibility. So you might leave yourself some notes on a chalkboard such as this. For instance, today, you need to organize a crew to fix the fences in the north orchard. And also you must move the Holsteins from second family to church lot. Then too, what has happened to the missing keys you've been entrusted with? Well, it's beginning to look like you're going to have to spend some time taking care of business, maybe at a table like this. And look at this one. It even has some ink stains on it, maybe put there 75 years ago. But it's a beautiful piece. This top made from one single pine board. And down here, a little storage drawer with dovetail joinery. And the thing that really gives this piece lightness and elegance, the tapered leg. A piece like this might go anywhere in today's modern home, but if I had one, I think I'd use it as a bedside table. From a woodworker's point of view, the only unusual thing about this bedside table is the tapered leg. It's straight on the outside, and it's tapered on the inside. That looks difficult to make, but it's really not that bad. I'll show you a little bit later. First thing I want to do, though, is start making some material, putting some material together for this top. And this morning I glued up some boards that are over here, and they're set in some pipe clamps. You know, today it's almost impossible to find a board that's 16.5 inches wide. And even if you could, later on you might have trouble with warping and twisting. So the best thing to do is to glue several boards together. In this case, 3 individual boards. The thing you want to do is pay attention to the growth rings. The growth rings are these lines which curve, and that shows you that the bark of the tree was out here on this board, on this one, on the other side, and on this one over here. So by alternating the growth rings, you end up with a stronger and a more stable top. Another thing I did was glue up some stock for my legs. And what I have to end up with is an 1.5 inch square piece of stock. Another type of material that's not that easy to find. So I've glued 2 boards together. And I've got 4 blanks over here that I'm ready to start milling. And I made the blanks a little bit wider than what I really need, because it's almost impossible to glue up stock and keep it perfectly even. So I'm going to start squaring it up by running one side through the saw. Now, with one side milled, I'll readjust my fence to just a little bit over 1.5 inches. And then, using the already milled side against my rip fence, I'll square up the other edge. Now I'm going to square up one end of these leg blanks. Now I can cut them to length, and I'm going to use this stop on my real fancy miter box extension. I want 26 inches. Not totally essential to have this, but boy, it sure speeds things up here at the shop. Let's take another look at our table again, and I'll give you the recipe for making the tapered legs. But take a look at the table. Doesn't it appear to you that the legs are further apart at the bottom than they are at the top? They're not. It's exactly the same distance to the outside. The designers of this table, the Shakers, did that deliberately. It's an illusion. It makes the piece lighter by tapering the legs. I think they were very effective in achieving what they wanted. But when I make these tapers, I don't want them to start up at the top. I want them to start below these rails so that I can fit these in squarely. So I'll taper this side of the leg and also this side of the leg. So all 4 legs have to be tapered on the inside. And I'll do that over here on my table saw with a tapering jig. Now you can buy these, but I made this one. It has a hinge that's attached to 2 pieces of oak. And then over here there's an adjustment feature, and by changing that I can get an infinite number of different wedges. So I've set it up for our legs, and you'll see that when you put a piece of wood in it and put the jig against the rip fence, as you push it through, you'll remove more and more material, and we'll get the taper that we want. Now I'll do all 4 legs. The next thing I want to do to the legs is mortise them. And by that I mean put a groove in each leg into which our side rails will fit like this. This is called a mortise and tenon joint. It gives me a lot of glue surface area right here, and it's the perfect choice for an application like this. Now I'll make all the mortises over here on this table with a router mounted underneath it. And I've installed a 1/2-inch grooving bit. And notice I've also taken the time to put down some masking tape which shows me the cutting edges where they begin and end on the bit. Now the thing you want to do is take the time to do the layout of these legs. Put an X where each mortise is going to be. That's very important. You want to keep it closest to the straight side of the leg, and you want to hold it back just a bit so that as you put the side rails in, you'll end up with about 1/8 of an inch reveal. And you also want it to be on the tapered side of the leg. Also, I've added a couple other marks right here, these beginning and ending points. And because I just can't push each piece through to make the mortise, I need those marks to show me where to drop my piece down over the bit, push it through, and remove it. Take a look. Now here on the front side of the table, which is the drawer side, things are a little bit different. I have 2 rails, one here and one here. So the mortising is going to have to be done a little bit differently. I'm going to need 2. One right here, which will be for the bottom rail, and one up here, which will be for the top rail. Now, once again, pay attention to that layout. You see I've put the witness marks where the cuts have to be, and on the other side I put my guidelines, which I'll use over at the router table. Let's try one. Now we're going to start making the rails, these pieces right here. You have to remember that there's a tenon on each end of the rails, so I want to add 1 inch to the overall dimension between the legs. So that means I need 2 pieces, 10 1/4, and 2 pieces, 14 1/2, and I'll cut them right here on the miter saw. Okay, now we can start making those tenons over here, and the first cut is a shoulder cut. Make this shoulder cut on both sides and both ends of all 4 pieces. So I've set the blade to the right height and distance, and notice I've clamped on a gauge block because I'm using my T-square in combination with the rip fence, and that prevents any kickback or bind up. Well, that does it for the tenoning. Now, if you remember, one piece I didn't make this shoulder cut right here. I'm going to use this piece to rip 2 1 1/4 inch rails for the front of the table. Well, now's the time to
sand off any of those witness marks and guidelines that I've put on the legs. And one more thing, because the mortises have rounded ends here, I want to just take a sharp utility knife and knock off those square corners on the tenons. Okay, let's see how that fits. That's good. A good quality yellow carpenter's glue applied to each joint. And make sure it's spread out with a little brush here. Then we'll put each corner together one at a time, wiping off any excess that might squeeze out or get on the pieces with a damp sponge. We put the whole thing together. All right, these clamps will hold it in place until the glue sets up.